Hey everyone, welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and I have another Wendy with us today, Wendy Battles, who is a cybersecurity awareness expert for Yale University. But her true passion is celebrating, illuminating, and elevating midlife and older women with her podcast as the host of Reinvention Rebels. Wendy interviews brave and unapologetic women, 50 to 90 years young, who have reinvented themselves later in life to see new possibilities. From traveling solo around the world with a carry on bag at 60 to running in global marathons at 71. Wendy shines a light on the notion that we can reinvent ourselves at any age or any stage and is helping to disrupt limiting beliefs about the value of aging women. And I love it. So, welcome, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm so excited to be here, and you know that we are going to have a really fantastic conversation.
Absolutely. So, how did this Reinvention Rebel idea concept podcast come into your awareness and inspire you?
It's such a beautiful question, and I'm going to tell you that it came to me in a whisper. Literally, I was meditating one day and I heard Reinvention Rebels. So just like that. And I will say that it was in a period when I was really searching for my purpose, searching for what I was meant to do. I've had many cycles of reinventing myself in my 30s, in my 40s. In my 50s, it was over 4 years ago, I was deeply wondering, what am I meant to do? I think it's more than just having this job. I think there's more out there for me, but I don't know what it is. And I had started to ask myself a lot of questions to really look within, to focus on what brings me joy. What do I love to do? What lights me up? What don't I like to do? What energizes me? And I literally started writing down answers. I had gotten this book and I was looking the book and be cooking dinner and writing down answers and thinking about things and thinking about what I loved. And one thing that came to me is that I love working with women because in my reinvention before this, I had been a health coach and all my clients were women. And so I know that coaching wasn't for me, but I liked this idea of helping women be their best. So I learned that from that experience. And as I was doing the searching, when I meditated on this particular day and I heard Reinvention Rebels, I thought, I don't know what that is, but something told me I should write it down. Because sometimes, Wendy, you think of things and it's like a fleeting thought, and you're like, oh, I can't remember what that was. Or you wake up from a dream and you remember it and then you don't.
Mhm.
So I had enough wisdom to know this was important. And over time, it unfolded. That was a podcast. Now, mind you, I never done podcasts before. I listened to podcasts. I'd certainly never hosted a podcast before. And in all of my jobs, I've done a lot of speaking, but I didn't know how to become a podcaster. And when I said, oh, it's a podcast, then it was like, well, now what?
Right. What's
What
the
do you
next?
do with that? Right? Like, how do you
Mhm.
figure that out? But I think that when we can figure out the why do we want to do something? Why do we want our life to be different? When we can figure out our why, then the how tends to unfold. I believe if we're curious and we're open. And that's what happened because honestly, I started telling people, even though I'd never podcasted, I was like, I'm gonna have a podcast. I told everybody I knew I'm gonna have a podcast. And I think what's always amazing about the universe is that the universe will always swoop in to support us because one of my colleagues said, well, I could edit the podcast for you. I'm an editor. I'm like,
Wow.
okay. And then I was listening to another podcast that I listened to, and the host was talking about how she had a program for people that wanted to become podcasters. And it was a self-paced program, and I bought this program and I started to figure it out. I mean, that was the how, like how. If we're motivated and inspired, the how will unfold. And it doesn't mean we don't have to do work because I worked really hard,
Right.
set it up and figure it out, and everything from creating a logo to figuring out like how do you host a podcast, all the things I know you know because you are a podcast host. So it was a journey that unfolded. The thing I will say is that sometimes in life, things happen to us or they don't work out the way we want to, and it feels crushing or very disappointing. But what I've learned is that all of those experiences, big and small, are conspiring together in our future. And I know we can't see it at the time because even back in my 30s, when I was reinventing myself, and I was off one summer because I'd had surgery, I remember sitting in my kitchen in my tiny little apartment and coming up with my personal mission statement, which was to speak, teach, motivate, and inspire. And I think it's very interesting that in every single job I've had since then, I've done that in different ways. It's manifested in many different ways, but I've done those things in all my jobs. And I feel like this reinvention as a podcast host is a culmination of all these different skills and experiences in a way that lights me up and really works for me. Because I never felt this way about health coaching. I wasn't excited. I was like, oh, well, I quit my job and I need to make this work. That is right. That's totally different than something that comes from within when
Right.
you're living on purpose and it lights you up and you would do it for free because you love it so much. And
Right.
right,
Ex-
that's the difference.
Exactly. And you have had incredible success with your podcast and amazing, amazing guests. What have you learned from these incredible women? What have been some of the takeaways as you hear their stories and hold space for them to share their journey? I know that I learned so much from my guests on my podcast. I was just wondering, like, what have you learned from the incredible people that have graced your podcast?
What a question. There's so many things. I'm going to boil it down because I can't go through my whole laundry list in this
Okay.
short time. But I would say my top three, Wendy. Number one, this compelling lesson about permission. That women get to a certain age and we have done all these things for our families, our spouses, our coworkers, you name it. We can go down a laundry list of all the things we've done, but we haven't done enough for ourselves. We haven't given ourselves permission to explore, to dream, to go for it, to just get out there and try it. There's something about when we get to midlife, when often our kids are grown or we're just in a different space, that we have more freedom. And what I see is that these women are giving themselves permission to explore, to grow, to expand, to try new things, to not have to feel like it has to be perfect. They might fail and get back up again. So self-permission is one theme. The second theme is this idea that it's never too late. Because I think that back in the day, we might have thought, well, I'm this age and I don't know if I can do that. And Teaching is so different now. People age and create so many new possibilities for their lives in big and small ways. And they remind me that someday is today. You know, we say, someday I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. I'm going to go traveling. I'm going to finally take that art class. I'm going to do whatever that thing is. But they remind me that someday, our someday is today. Like, what are we waiting for? We need to just do it, which leads me into the third thing I've learned from them. And that is this idea of inspired action in small ways. I think that often we get this idea of something we want to do, and it's really big, and we can get so overwhelmed by the bigness of it, whatever it might be. And I can only speak from personal experience that I have many unfinished projects and ideas. And, I was like, I'm gonna do X, and I get started on it, then it gets frustrating, then I don't continue. And what I really learned from them is this idea of inspired action in small steps. So instead of like thinking of the hundreds of things you'd have to do something big, like move around the world, it's like, okay, it's one thing I could do. Talk to someone I know who's moved abroad and is an expat and just learn about their experience. That's a small action I could take. That's an inspired action to get me started. So instead of having to map everything out with all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, it's really about this idea of just easing in, taking a small step forward, and letting that help guide you to the next things. And that has made such a difference for so many people. Just getting started. You got to get started to get in the game. You got to get started.
So many
And
people want to have that entire life blueprint, every detail, how, the when, the why, the cost, the everything, you know? And I just really find that if it's meant for you, if it's aligned, right? Like you said, the universe conspires to bring all the right people and knowledge and support without it's effortless when you're in your alignment. It's effortless.
yes,
And you just have to keep taking that next step. And there's so much faith and trust required as we navigate forward. And one thing I've found is believing in myself is such a key element
yes,
because I think as women, we are expected to be in service. It's it's kind of a program that is ingrained very early that we make sure people are happy, that we take care of others, that we take care of the home, the family. We show up at work in service, and service to self is at the very bottom of the list.
yes,
And
it
it's
is.
really difficult to break out of that and reverse it and flip it and go, actually, service to self should be number one so that your bank is full, right? And that you have energy and joy and passion to bring forward into whatever it is that's calling to you, really.
Absolutely. I think that you said that so well, this idea of being of service to ourselves and being able to do that also in a way where we do feel that confidence in doing that, where we don't feel guilty, when we understand that when we are at our best, we can then be better for the people in our lives, or we can show up better at work, at home, in our relationships and our friendships, all of those things. And I see that for myself now because one of the things I've really been working on is more sleep, getting enough sleep. I was not getting enough sleep. And one of the, there are all these studies now that say that if you don't get enough sleep as you age, that you're shortening your lifespan, that it's so critical to, being really healthy as you age and also to help prevent dementia. I
Hmm.
thought, I'm doing my thing. I'm working so hard. I'm doing something I love, but that's not I still can do it in better balance. Just because I'm doing something I love, if you're working yourself to the bone, is that really healthy?
Mm-hmm.
And I really have had to take a step back and think about what does it mean to create a sleep hygiene? What does it mean to actually set boundaries around sleep? So I determined that my goal is to be in bed at 9:30 on weeknights, because I get up at 5 every day, so I can be asleep by 10.
Right.
And then I still have to work backwards. Well, if I'm going to actually be in the bed, not getting ready to get in the bed, but in the bed at 9:30, well, I got to start early because I got to like wash my face, brush my teeth. I have this whole evening ritual. I like
Right.
to meditate. I like to read. So I'm just thinking, but I'm figuring that out. To your point about self-care and prioritizing us, because I will tell you that when I woke up this morning, Wendy, at 5 a.m. after turning off the light at maybe 9:40. I felt so good.
I
I
love
felt
it. I love
focused. I felt I was in a great mood. I felt productive. And sleep matters. So, yes, to your idea of self-care as a priority. Self-care is not selfish. Really taking care of ourselves really means we can take better care of others too.
100%. When we fill our tank, right? When we fill our cup, then we can, I always say, pour from the overflow. But women typically are just running down the meter, They're just over giving, overdoing, over committing, over everything, and
Yes.
um pretty much taking themselves to the edge, right? And
Yeah.
we can't be at our highest and best when we're running on empty. So to your point, the sleep is so important. So important. What has been calling to your soul? I know you just created this incredible program, so let's talk about that.
One of the things that's really interesting, and I've learned from my own personal experience of reinvention, is that it's what I call an inside job, which is illustrated by my story of hearing Reinvention Rebels. I believe that when we create this opening, this space, when we create a more expansive space in our lives to be quiet, to tune in, there is this well of wisdom within all of us. We all have it.
Mhm.
It's often that we're so busy, as you just said, running around, trying to help everybody else, that
Mhm.
we can't even hear it. We can't hear these messages that our soul is trying to tell us all the time. And I realize that if we can reinvent from the inside out, if I can help women, and of course men can take it too, but if I can help people see that they already have this wisdom inside and help them figure out how to get started on the reinvention journey, that adds a lot of value. So I really did an analysis of the many episodes that I've created, and I've created both these amazing guest episodes with people like you because you were on my podcast in 2022 and you must come back.
Thank
And I've also, created solo episodes. And when I started to look at the content around those solo episodes, I realized that there are some essential things that people I call reinvention rebels, which, as you mentioned at the beginning, a reinvention rebel is simply a woman who's awakened.
you.
And she has found her voice and decided that unapologetically she wants to reinvent in a way that works for her. And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be some huge thing like moving halfway around the world. It could be something small. We can reinvent ourselves in so many different ways. But I started to realize, oh, there are these essential things that reinvention rebels, these women I've interviewed, and I mentioned some of them, like this idea of self-permission that they possess, and that I think are really essential to being able to reinvent ourselves in a way that brings us this deep joy that we're talking about, that lights us up, where we feel like we're truly living on purpose. So I created this course. It's an 8-part audio course. It's called Midlife Reinvention from the Inside Out: 8 Essentials to Greenlight Your Life. And I use
Awesome.
this, right? This metaphor of traveling because I think that so often, we give ourselves a stoplight or a caution light. Like, well, I better slow down, or I don't know if I should do that, or I don't think I can. Instead of green lighting, just like, producer green lights a script, we want to green light our life. We want to give ourselves that permission to move forward. And this 8-part course, small little audio modules between 8 and 10 minutes each, and a beautiful workbook that comes with it, steps people through this idea. And it starts with this idea of knowing your why. We have to know our why as the first and most important step. But what I love, Wendy, is that every 3 days you get a new module. So you have time to listen, work on the worksheet. There's some great questions that I'm asking you to think through and noodle on. And then you have a few days to digest it before the next module comes. So it's a great way to get started, to dip your feet into this idea of reinvention at any age or any state.
And where can they find this incredible course. Where can they
It
purchase it, Wendy?
it is such a great question. It is on my website, reinventionrebels.com, where they can go. There's a tab for Take My Course. They can learn more. And I'll also mention that if people want to get to know me, I have a great way that they can get started. I have a free audio download that is called 5 Questions to Spark Your Curiosity and Inspire Your Reinvention Rebel Journey. So it's a great way to just begin to think about, huh, well, maybe I could do a little reinvention. I've got 5 great questions that I ask people just to get them started. And you get a really good sense of my style and, me coming to you in your earbuds.
I love it. I love it. Well, congratulations on the launch of that incredible program. I love how you're
Thank you.
supporting the journey of so many people. And I find that people who are kind of out front, inspiring and teaching and guiding, have been through so much in their own lives to give them the wisdom, the experience, the foundation to show up. So, what would you say are some of the pivot points that really moved you in your trajectory and have brought you here where you're now able to offer all of this wisdom?
Oh, that is such a deep, deep question, Wendy. There have been many different pivot points in my life. And I think what's interesting, going back to when I was a teenager, one of the things I learned in a very difficult way is the power of trusting our gut. That when we get a feeling that something isn't right, we should act on that feeling. And I think I spent a lot of my time not doing that. So I think
Mhm.
this is something that's changed. And I'll tell you this very brief story. When I was 17, I went to Mexico with a lot of my classmates on an exchange program in the summer for 3 weeks. We lived with families. Well, on this one particular day, it was a Friday. We went to school with our schoolmates. I was living with this very nice family, and and so there was going to be a party that night. And this was in Mexico City, which is really huge. So it's like living being in New York, but much more spread out,
Mhm.
or some like LA or something where you're going from one end to the other and it's very big. And all day I had a bad feeling. But 17, how do you even articulate that? I
Right.
didn't I didn't have the skills to articulate that something didn't feel right, but I had this bad feeling all day about this. And then we go to this party, and I think, it was early enough that we took a train to get there. But when it was over, the trains had stopped. And this woman, the girl I was with, insisted that we had to go home. We had to go home. It's like 1 in the morning or something. And so I just had such a bad feeling. But what can you say? Like, I don't really speak Spanish that well. I'm in this foreign place. I don't know where I'm going. I can't just say I'm not going.
Right.
So I went. I went with her. And it ends up, to make a long story short, that we were abducted. And
What?
yes, we were abducted and sexually assaulted, which is so common, unfortunately, in Mexico. It happens all the time.
What? Oh my
Yes.
gosh, Wendy.
And it was such a pivotal moment in my life, Wendy, because it was all about not trusting myself
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
having the voice to say something.
Right.
And, it's taken me years and tons of therapy and et
Course.
cetera to
Work through.
obviously work through it.
Mm.
And it's a whole different story now at 59. But I think that was probably the most pivotal moment of my life.
How did you escape? Did they just let you go after?
They did. They drove us around in a van for a long time and they finally let us go. And I remember we ran, like we were in a parking garage or something, and we ran and this very nice man helped us. And I
That must
honestly
have
now,
been terrifying.
it was
Terrifying.
terrifying. It was just terrifying. And I don't even remember how we honestly ever ended up getting home. It's all sort of a blur.
Mhm.
But I think that it reminds me now, because now I'm so much more into listening, which is right. What this is all about is listening from the inside out and listening to those things and trusting myself. And it's taken me a long, long time to get there. But that was definitely one of those moments. So
Wow.
certainly, my parents dying, things like that, where you question things, you know, is what I'm doing worthwhile? Could I be doing something else? It just is one of those sort of watershed moments
Hmm.
where you really think about your life and you consider things. And I think I've had some of those certainly as well, that have driven me, but I've learned so much
Yeah.
about the fact that I can trust myself.
There's always a lesson in it. Even the darkest, hardest, most challenging things, they seem to offer the biggest growth opportunities if we can be brave, if we can show up for ourselves and have the courage to navigate those dark spaces and emotions and traumas and find our way to the light, out of those dark experiences. I find that the takeaway and the resilience and the strength and the knowing that comes from it is so valuable in moving us into that next space or that next phase of our lives.
I completely agree. And to your point, I think we're much braver than we think.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we don't think we're very courageous. But and one of the things that we talk about in this course is building your courage muscle. And one of the exercises I have people do is think about all of the times when you did something courageous. Because I think we forget about the courageous things we did, and it could be anything. And when we have a chance to like document that and see that, it reminds us that we're stronger than we think. That, yes, to your point, it can be hard. We can have dark times, but on the other side of that, I totally agree with you. There's so much possibility, there's so much joy. And yes, it's hard to go through those things, but if we can even get a little glimpse into what could be, we can use that to propel us forward.
I feel like we rise stronger when we can navigate with courage and love also for ourselves. We're not practiced, in self-love. That's not
No.
something that's nurtured in us or encouraged. And I'm finding that that is such a critical piece to navigating forward in life. Like, we have to have a sense of who we are and know that we are worthy and that we are beautiful, that we are strong, and that we are um, deserving of our own love, kindness, and compassion, because when we can do that and open the floodgates of those emotions towards ourselves, it's like water in the desert, it's like a balm for our soul when we can do that. And it really opens so many doors of possibility, like you're talking about, if we can navigate life from that space.
It does. And you are so right, Wendy, that who grew up thinking about self-love and appreciating ourselves? And I think, especially as women, because we're so objectified in our society, so much of it is based on how we look and
Mm-hmm.
not what's inside. So I think that we have this programming about what our value is. And how
Totally.
do you undo that? That takes years of reprogramming, right?
Of
About
conscious choosing, right? Of conscious work and conscious expression and conscious choices, really. What would you say is the thing that helps you be courageous and embrace your next idea and really step out in courage and faith and um, love as you move forward and create new things and move in new directions. What gives you courage? How do you do it? What helps you to actually
It's
take the
definitely,
steps?
yeah, that's such a great question. And for me, it's definitely that inner voice, that inner wisdom. Because in addition to, of course, hearing Reinvention Rebels and starting the podcast, I've heard it in many other ways over the years. Now that I'm open to it,
Mhm.
and also now that I've slowed down enough to actually hear it. And I know that when it comes from within, that it's never steering me wrong. Just like before when I didn't listen to that gut feeling and it was so strong, yet I didn't know what to do. When I was 17, now I know. Now I have a knowing that when an idea bubbles up, it's coming from within and it's something. And again, I just write it down. It doesn't mean every single idea that comes up I'm going to do something with, but I think that it tells me that I am wise. It
Mhm.
tells me that I have this inner wisdom. It tells me that I have my own internal GPS and that when I trust that, things are easier. I can live with more ease when I trust that feeling. And that's what I've learned about being courageous, that it's actually easier than I think. I'm not saying it's easy because we all of course all have difficult situations in
Right,
which we find ourselves.
right.
But it is easier because it also goes back to what you said before. You said trust and faith, trust and faith. And that's what I believe that I have learned how to trust myself.
That's huge. Also, it's really important, I think, that we belong to ourselves. Because if you don't belong to yourself, if you chase worthiness and validation in belonging, you filter yourself down to belong. You start to accommodate and filter and water yourself down so that you can belong and fit in. And it takes a kind of inner strength to really say, you know what? I'm not here to fit in. I'm here to stand out. I'm here to lead. I'm here to be out front. I'm here for a very specific calling or mission or role to play. And that requires you to be able to not belong, to to walk alone sometimes,
Yeah.
to allow people to feel threatened by who you are and how you're showing up and the things you're saying and be okay with it, because
Yeah.
I think those of us who are kind of breaking barriers and speaking truth and really following our passions are people that have such that a strong innate knowing and purpose that we're here to do something really specific, that there's nothing that can really pull us off course, and no one literally who can.
Yeah. It's really true. And I think that the more we do it, however, the easier it becomes. That as we can step more into who we are and feel confident about that, sometimes it just takes practice. We have to practice and we might stumble and fall, but we can get up again and we can try again. And I think that there is freedom in finding that voice of ours and being okay with standing out and not having to follow the crowd and deprogramming ourselves basically from
Yeah.
what we learned. It's all about pleasing everybody else and not pleasing ourselves. So I think it's such a rich opportunity for us. I think it's a rich time in midlife to explore these ideas and to shine that light on ourselves in a way that many of us haven't done before or didn't give ourselves permission to do. And oh my gosh, when we do, I think it's rather exhilarating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know recently you lost your mom. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, not only is it just so hard emotionally, but how I would think like what do you how do you even process it?
Mm.
What do you do with all of that emotion? And how have you been navigating that experience?
No, I don't think very well, to be honest. I don't think very well. I'm trying. I think what's hard is that I come from a family where we didn't talk about a lot of things. We definitely didn't talk about our emotions.
Mm,
And I I feel every day I miss her. But of course you have to go on because you can't, I mean, you can feel the feelings, but you can't like not go to work. Like,
right,
I'm missing my mom so much. I'm sorry, boss, but I won't be in today.
right.
Right? So you still have to navigate life. So I think I'm I'm figuring it out. And one of the things that came in the mail was something from my mom had cancer and she had been in hospice in a nursing home. But these wonderful people came, and one of the services they offer is grief counseling.
Hmm.
And I thought, I think I would really benefit from joining a group and actually talking about it talking about it with other people that understand.
With
And of
help?
course, I have so
Did-
many friends, of course, that have lost their moms or a
Yeah,
parent that
right.
do understand, but I think it's also different when it's just focused on that. When you give yourself permission to talk about it in this space.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things that I want to do is to, because they said you can join at any time, and they were very, very supportive. So I think that that's something that would help me because I think what I did, honestly, Wendy, is I jumped very quickly back into working.
Mm,
And I think the thing is, in this situation, my mom had said, "Well, I don't want a funeral." And she wanted to be cremated. And she said, "I want you to have a memorial service at a convenient time for you. It's not a rush." And so I think maybe part of it is because we haven't done that yet because she died in September. And the most important thing we could do at the time was we had to empty out her apartment because she was, renting this apartment. And that took us much longer than we expected, my brother and I, working on the weekends, going through
right.
her things. So that part was so hard and it took so much longer than we expected because we initially said, okay, let's have the memorial service in November. But in October, we were still like working on the apartment, trying to
Gosh.
figure out like, we need to have an auction. We need to get rid of her things somehow. And
Right.
so I think that we were so befuddled by that.
Yeah,
And that was so our focus that we decided it wasn't the time to, and then the holidays were coming.
right.
It just wasn't the right time. So then we decided, okay, let's have it this spring. So that's what we're planning. We don't have a date yet, but we're going to have it sometime this spring, maybe like May, when it's nice out, the weather's nice. We could do it at this community center that she loved, that she was really involved in. So, but I think we haven't had that closure. So part of it, I think it's hard is that we haven't yet had the closure of celebrating her. Because she said, I don't want people boo-hooing over me. I don't want some funeral and some casket. And,
I mean,
she knew what she wanted.
she's also someone you said who wasn't very emotive and didn't like talking about emotions and feelings and things. So that doesn't surprise me, right? She's like,
Yeah.
oh, let's just call it a day and like no fanfare, but you're such the
Yeah.
opposite. You're so um infused with energy and emotion and connection and um was it hard to kind of be in an environment that just didn't encourage that? Because you're just
You
so
know,
organically like living out
yeah.
loud. It's just who you are.
Well, I think one that's come over time because I don't think I was always like this.
Mhm.
And two, I think growing up, we only know what we know, right?
Yeah.
We don't That's like the only way we don't know. Like I got to college and I realized, wow, so many people I know grew up in alcoholic families with such deep dysfunction that I knew nothing about. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know that you could walk around on eggshells because you're not sure like what's going to set that person off. Like I'd never experienced anything like that.
Yeah.
And that was so shocking and eye-opening to me that wow. And I think that's when we're younger, we just know what we know. We know that this is our family and we
This
don't
is
even know
how
it's
we do it.
dysfunctional,
This
right?
is
This is just what is.
yeah.
And so I think it was that combination of that's just how it was. And then later on, as I've found myself, I
Mhm.
think I've become this much bigger, much more expansive person. So I think that it's interesting. What I will say though is that she really wanted to, when my mom passed away, she was almost 91. And, for the last couple of years, she'd been ill, but we were really trying to get her to her 90th birthday because we wanted to have this big party. And we were able to do that. So in September of 2022, we had this party, and it was almost like a living memorial service. And not that people got up and said things like that, but they just like celebrated her. And
Mhm.
that's what she wanted. She wanted a celebration.
Beautiful.
We had people that came, like her cousins surprised her and came from Georgia, and she didn't know three of our cousins. And it was just everything about this was perfect. And she had such great memories of it. And because her mind was still really sharp.
Mhm.
So I felt like that was an immense celebration, and she got to appreciate it. She got to be there. She was sort of overwhelmed, I think, by, you know,
The
all of these
love.
people. The love. Yeah. But it was just so great because then after that, it started literally after that, I don't know, a few weeks later, she started with a lot of hospitalizations on and off that continued in 2023. I think 10 times she was in the hospital in
Oh my gosh.
2023.
Do you live close by? Did you
Yeah,
live?
like 10 minutes away, 10 minutes away.
Okay,
So,
so that was a
so that
good
part was
thing.
great. That part was great.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I was so happy to be there for her and to be her advocate because
Yes.
I see
Yes.
so many people don't have that. So many people are
No,
by themselves. And if you
no.
have that, someone to advocate for you, especially as because she started to get a little confused and forget things over
Right.
time.
Yeah.
So, so I feel very complete about
Good.
that I
And you
was her
spent a
person and I
lot
was
of
there.
time with her, obviously, because of all these
Yeah,
surgeries and everything. So you had a lot of time with her
I did. I
last
also
time.
think I think although I also, Wendy, started the grieving process before she died because she became less of herself.
Mm.
I saw that like she started to forget things and they say that when you go to a nursing home or she'd gone to rehab in February for like 5 weeks. And I swear that was the start of it because I tell you, they say you go to those places, you come out, and it is not, the people are not the same. And
Oh,
she just started to like little things, and then um, so that I feel like that was sort of the start of things kind of going downhill. So I saw so closely this progression. And I think it was just so sad. A part of it was, she had cancer and she had, a non-smoker who had lung cancer, and it was, as things go, a minor case.
that's really something. But
Yeah,
she grew up in an era where smoking was a common thing. There's a lot of secondhand
yeah.
going on
A lot of
too.
secondhand smoke. It's not unusual for, people to get non-smokers to get lung cancer. So I think the part that was good and that was a blessing is that because it was a relatively mild case, she never needed chemotherapy. She never had to lose her hair. She
Oh,
never went to
wow.
an infusion center. She
Mhm.
she had radiation treatments, and that at the time just kind of put everything on hold, and it seemed to really help. She had a couple rounds of that, but so in that sense, she wasn't the often the kind of sick person we associate with cancer. And I know we all know people that have struggled with, been in horrible situations. One of my closest friends just passed away from cancer a few months ago. So we all know the sadness of
Right,
that and
right,
seeing people we love suffer. And so in that sense, it was less of that, which was good, but just more of her kind of fading slowly away. And it was still hard to see that. Like after time, she wasn't eating.
right.
And, people have,
Did she
um,
have a caregiver and you would go visit and on
yeah,
weekends?
she did. She had, so we had someone that came in about 32 hours a week, a couple different people, and one of them was amazing. This woman, Yolanda, who was just like so fabulous. So we definitely had people. And then over time, though, the last time she went in the hospital in June, the doctor was like, she needs 24-hour care. And not like someone by her side 24 hours a day, not that, but just that she was becoming less stable. She was becoming more of a fall risk, that kind of thing. So she went back to this nursing home where she'd been before for like short term.
It's kind of
And it ends up,
depressing, right? Like,
it was, and I
mm,
think at first when she got there, she was very up and, moving around. But after a while, they kind of get you in a wheelchair and then you're not walking as much. And then you could slowly see, the food is terrible. So I hated the fact that that's how it was. Although I will say that as nursing homes go, she was in a really high quality one where they're
Wow.
relatively attentive,
Yeah.
relatively attentive, still short staffed, but
I'm glad you
oh,
could participate and show up
yeah,
as
me too.
much as you could. And
Yeah, I
it's
feel like I
it's
have no
just a tough,
regrets.
it's a tough, it's a tough thing to watch your mom or dad fade
It really is.
emotionally, but I'm glad that you're still standing and
Yeah, and
creating
do
inspiring
it.
content and working on your podcast all the time and connecting
Yeah.
the rest of the world with these incredible guests that you have. They're so inspiring. I mean, you probably know more inspiring women on this planet than anyone. You just keep pulling these people out of a hat. So it's
It's
amazing.
amazing. It's amazing who you meet, who shows up in your path, who really does inspire you with their story. And the way that these women open up and talk about their journeys, and just like we're doing today, they are really vulnerable. They talk about both their failures and what went wrong, and then how they kind of rerouted and got back on track. Because I think, that happens to any of us. I think on any given day, we can have a day where we feel great. And the next day we might think, oh God, I don't feel very confident today. I don't know if I can do this. I woke up on Monday and that's how I felt. Like I'd felt really good. And we all can have a day like that. And then I just got back on track on Tuesday and I felt better.
I find
And
that self-talk is a really powerful thing for me. Sometimes I just have to say to myself, you got this. You
exactly.
got this. You've gotten this far. You've survived everything in your life, and you are still standing strong. You got this, and
Yes, girl.
I have to say it to myself because there's nobody telling me you got
Right.
this. I have to like,
I'll always tell
well,
you, Wendy. I'll always tell you. Just
thank you. I'm
text
gonna
me,
call
call
you
me
next
up.
time. I'm gonna text you. But
Yeah,
we have to be our own allies, right? Our best
we
friends, our cheerleaders,
do.
and do it unapologetically. Because if
Absolutely.
we don't have our own backs and support ourselves in our own journey, who will, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
You are so right. It is so important that we begin to, figure it out.
yes,
And,
yes,
and sometimes
yes.
I talk about in the course having this idea of having a reinvention dream team
Mm-hmm.
that we do need cheerleaders. We need more than just ourselves because sometimes we do need that encouragement and we need someone that has perspective when we're so close to something where we
Mm-hmm.
can't see how far we've come. And I think that when we can have a few people that will always cheer us on, that will always be there for us, even when other people are saying, no, you can't, or what are you thinking, or who are you to think you can do that? I've been like, yes, you can. What makes you think you can't do that? Wendy, yes, you can. Right? And we need those people. We need our cheerleaders.
Exactly. Wendy, we're just about out of time. It went too fast, but I would love for you to share just some wisdom off the top of your head for people who are looking to pivot and maybe move in a new direction as they get older and they're a little fearful? What would you suggest? What would you offer them?
Slow down and get quiet. That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
That if we can slow our roll and spend more time in our body, being quiet. Sometimes it's just sitting down and doing nothing, which I know most of us never do. Like, who am I? How can I do nothing? I'm used to doing something. But going outside, going for a walk, connecting with nature, journaling. You mentioned this idea of journaling. But I think that when we can do things that get us in touch with ourselves, when so often we're out of touch,
Mm-hmm.
those things can help us take a first step because that's when we can listen to some of those messages that are bubbling up that we maybe have been too busy to hear, or we've been running back and forth or taking care of other people. So just the act of slowing down, tuning in. Maybe it's just that you spend a few minutes every day in silence, just sitting down. No phone. You know how it is, we're all attached to our phones. No text messages,
Yes.
no computer, no TV, just being with ourselves, because I think so many of us, Wendy, it's like a foreign thing to spend time with ourselves. We're used to being with other people, maybe to make us happier or whatever. So this is reinvention is about getting to know yourself. So that's just the simplest thing that we can do is just to slow down, get more quiet, spend more time with ourselves, and see what bubbles up when we do so.
Wendy, I love that. Such perfect wisdom to close this podcast. Thank you for being you, Wendy. Thank you for everything you bring to the world, your light, your message, your wisdom, your podcast, Reinvention Rebels. Guys, check it out. Reinventionrebels.com. Right? Is that the
Right.
website?
Exactly. That's the website, reinventionrebels.com. You can learn more. And thank you, Wendy. Thank you back. This was such a pleasure, such an honor. So
Oh,
wonderful to be in conversation with you. I love our conversations. So thank you.
I know. I love connecting with you too. Thank you so much for being here. And to my audience, thank you so much for being with us on the journey. I hope you took some jewels of wisdom from Wendy Battles. She is such an inspiration. I hope you go out, have a beautiful day. Don't forget to love yourselves, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.